In today's video I'm going to share 5 common mistakes people make when keeping birds in aviaries. These are mistakes I have seen many times. Welcome back to Dream Birds Aviary. In today's video I'm going to share 5 common mistakes people make when keeping birds in aviaries. These are mistakes I have seen many times, and some I also learned from experience over the years. If you are keeping birds or planning to build an aviary, avoiding these mistakes can help keep your birds healthier, safer and less stressed. So let's go through the 5 biggest aviary mistakes you should avoid. Let's start with mistake number 1, and this is one of the most common mistakes in aviary bird keeping: mixing incompatible birds together. Many people think it's a good idea to keep different types of birds in one aviary. They think it will look nice, more colorful and more active. But in reality, this can create serious problems. Different birds have different sizes, behaviors and personalities. For example, small birds like finches and canaries are very delicate, while parrots like ringnecks, alexandrines or amazons are much stronger and more dominant. Even if the larger birds are not aggressive, their size and strength alone can be dangerous for smaller birds. Another problem is behavior. Some birds are calm and peaceful, while others are more territorial and protective. When these different personalities are mixed together, it can lead to stress, chasing or even injury. Birds also compete for food and space. Larger or more confident birds often take over feeding areas, leaving smaller birds feeling nervous or unable to eat properly. Over time, this stress can affect the health of the birds. You might not see fighting, but stress alone can cause birds to become weak, quiet or unwell. That is why in my aviary, I keep different species in separate aviaries. This helps create a safe and balanced environment where each bird can behave naturally without fear or stress. So if you are keeping birds, one of the most important things to remember is: do not mix incompatible species in the same aviary. Now let's talk about mistake number 2, overcrowding the aviary. This is another very common mistake, especially when people start collecting more birds over time. At the beginning, the aviary may feel like it has plenty of space. But as more birds are added, the space becomes limited without people realizing it. Birds need space not only to sit, but also to fly, move and feel comfortable. When too many birds are kept in a small space, it can create stress and competition. One of the first problems with overcrowding is lack of space for flying. Birds need room to stretch their wings and move from perch to perch. If the aviary is too crowded, they cannot fly properly, which affects their health and fitness. Another issue is competition for food and water. When there are too many birds, feeding areas can become busy. Stronger or more dominant birds may take over, and weaker birds might not get enough food. Overcrowding can also lead to more aggressive behavior. Birds may start fighting over perches, nesting areas or space. Even normally calm birds can become stressed when there is not enough room. Hygiene is another important factor. More birds in a small space means more waste, and this can make it harder to keep the aviary clean. Poor hygiene can lead to health problems and disease. It also becomes harder to observe individual birds. If one bird is unwell or behaving differently, it is more difficult to notice when there are too many birds in the same space. In my aviary, I always try to balance the number of birds with the available space. Each aviary is designed to give birds enough room to fly, rest and behave naturally. So if you are keeping birds, always think about space. It is better to have fewer birds in a comfortable environment than too many birds in a crowded aviary. Avoiding overcrowding will help keep your birds healthier, calmer and more active. Now let's talk about mistake number 3, wrong feeding setup and poor diet. This is one of the most important parts of bird keeping, and also one of the most common mistakes people make. Many people think feeding birds is simple, just give seed and that's enough. But in reality, different birds need different types of food and proper feeding setups. For example, small birds like finches and canaries eat very small seeds, while larger parrots like ringnecks, alexandrines or amazons need bigger seeds, fruits and a more varied diet. If all birds are given the same food without thinking about their needs, some birds may not get the nutrition they require. Another common mistake is the feeding setup itself. If food trays are placed in a way where stronger birds can dominate them, smaller or weaker birds may not get enough food. Even if there is plenty of food, some birds can feel nervous and avoid feeding areas. That is why it is important to have multiple feeding points and to place them in a way where all birds can access food comfortably. Clean water is also very important. Water should be changed regularly, and containers should be kept clean to prevent bacteria and disease. Another issue is overfeeding or unbalanced feeding. Giving only one type of seed every day is not enough for many birds. A balanced diet may include different seeds, fresh food and sometimes supplements depending on the species. In my aviary, I try to match the feeding system to each type of bird. Smaller birds have suitable feeders, and larger parrots have their own feeding areas. This helps reduce competition, stress and ensures all birds get proper nutrition. Feeding is not just about giving food. It is about giving the right food in the right way. If feeding is done properly, birds will be more active, healthier and show better behaviour. So always pay attention to both diet and feeding setup when keeping birds in an aviary. Now let's talk about mistake number 4, poor aviary design and not providing proper shelter. This applies to both indoor and outdoor aviaries. No matter what type of aviary you have, the setup and protection are very important for the birds. Birds should always have a space where they feel safe, comfortable and protected from stress. In outdoor aviaries, this means protection from rain, wind, cold and strong sunlight. In indoor aviaries, it means protecting birds from cold drafts, sudden temperature changes and making sure the environment is stable and comfortable. Another important part is having a proper layout inside the aviary. Birds need good perch placement, space to move and areas where they can rest without disturbance. If the aviary is not designed properly, birds can feel exposed or stressed, even if they have enough space. Shelter is not only about weather, it is also about giving birds a sense of security. Every bird needs a place where it can sit calmly, away from noise or disturbance. In my aviary, I always try to create a balanced setup with open space for movement and sheltered areas for comfort. So whether your aviary is indoor or outdoor, design and protection are very important. A well-designed aviary helps keep birds calm, healthy and stress-free. Now let's talk about mistake number 5, not observing your birds daily. This is one of the most important parts of bird keeping, and many people don't realize how important it is. Birds cannot tell you when something is wrong, so the only way to understand them is by watching their behavior every day. Even a few minutes of observation can tell you a lot. For example, healthy birds are usually active, alert and moving around. They eat regularly, interact with other birds and respond to their environment. If a bird is sitting quietly all the time, looking fluffed up, not eating or staying away from others, this could be an early sign that something is wrong. If you don't observe your birds daily, you might miss these early signs. Another important point is behavior changes. Birds have their own routines. When you know your birds well, you will notice quickly if something changes. This could be due to stress, illness, diet or changes in the environment. Daily observation also helps you understand relationships between birds. You can see which birds are calm, which are more dominant and if there is any chasing or stress happening inside the aviary. This is especially important if you have more than one bird in the same aviary. Observation also helps with feeding. You can see if all birds are getting food, or if some birds are being pushed away. In my aviary, I always take time to watch the birds every day. This helps me keep track of their health, behavior and overall condition. It doesn't have to be complicated, just spend a few minutes watching carefully. So one of the best things you can do as a bird keeper is simply observe your birds daily. It helps you catch problems early and keep your birds healthy and comfortable. Before we finish, let's quickly go over these mistakes again. Mistake number 1 was mixing incompatible birds. Mistake number 2 was overcrowding the aviary. Mistake number 3 was wrong feeding setup and poor diet. Mistake number 4 was poor aviary design and not providing proper shelter. And mistake number 5 was not observing your birds daily. All of these mistakes are very common, but they can be avoided with a little planning and attention. Also, one important thing I always say is, every aviary is different. What works for one setup may not work for another, so always take time to understand your own birds, their behavior and their needs. From my own experience managing multiple aviaries, I have learned that small changes can make a big difference. Even improving feeding, space or observation slightly can improve bird health and behavior. So those are 5 common mistakes people make when keeping birds in aviaries. If you avoid these mistakes, you can keep your birds healthier, safer and less stressed. Every aviary is different, and there is no one perfect way, but understanding your birds and giving them the right environment is the most important thing. From my experience, small changes can make a big difference in how birds behave and how comfortable they feel. I hope this video helps you improve your aviary setup and take better care of your birds. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to Dreambirds Aviary. And I'll see you in the next video.